It started with a question no one expected from a man who had seemingly everything of fame, power, and purpose. When Senator John Kennedy stood before a quiet audience one evening in Baton Rouge and said, "I spent years searching for truth, and I finally found it in Christ," the room fell silent. Cameras stopped clicking. Even the air seemed to pause. What followed was a story that would move millions, a story not of politics, but of a man's battle with doubt, darkness, and the quiet, unshakable light of faith. For years, Kennedy had been known for his sharp wit, his clever remarks on Capitol Hill, and his no-nonsense political style. But behind the polished speeches and public appearances, he carried a private emptiness. He often described it later as a restlessness that no victory could quiet. Friends recalled how he would linger alone after long days at the Senate, staring out over the Capitol dome, lost in thought. He was searching, said one former aide. He wanted something more than policy and power. He wanted peace. That peace, however, was elusive. Kennedy grew up in a family that valued education, honor, and service. But faith was something he rarely spoke about. He respected religion, but never truly embraced it. "I used to think faith was for the weak," he once admitted. "I believed in hard work, in intellect, in control. But there are moments life strips you of all that and then you see what really matters." Those moments came crashing down in a series of personal storms. The loss of close friends, the pressures of public life, and the loneliness of constant scrutiny began to take their toll. "I reached a point," Kennedy shared in one of his later interviews, "where I realized that success without meaning is just noise. I was tired of the noise." It was during one of those darker seasons that he encountered an old friend, someone who had once been a political advisor but left Washington to become a pastor. They met at a small coffee shop on a rainy afternoon. Kennedy joked, "So, you're saving souls now?" But his friend simply smiled and replied, "No, John, I'm just telling people where I found peace." That conversation planted a seed. His friend didn't preach or persuade, he simply shared his story of redemption and the grace that met him in his worst moments. For weeks afterward, Kennedy found himself thinking about that talk. He started reading the Bible not as a politician searching for quotes, but as a man looking for answers. The words of Matthew 11:28 echoed in his heart, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." At first, it was uncomfortable. Faith felt like surrender, and surrender didn't come naturally to him. But slowly, something began to change. He described feeling a quiet pull, something gentle yet powerful. One night, alone in his home office, he bowed his head for the first time in years and prayed. "I didn't have the perfect words," he said, "but I remember saying, 'Hey Lord, if you're real, I'm tired of running. Show me who you are.'" That moment, he said, changed everything. It wasn't lightning or thunder, it was peace. "For the first time in my life, I wasn't performing. I was just a broken bar still." Since then, Kennedy has spoken openly about his faith not as a politician making a statement, but as a man who found healing. He often tells audiences that Christianity didn't make his life easier, but it gave it meaning. "Faith doesn't remove the storms," he says, "but it gives you an anchor that holds when the waves come." Those who know him best say he's different now. There's a gentleness behind the humor, a compassion behind the conviction. He still fights hard for what he believes, one colleague said, but you can tell there's something deeper guiding him now. In recent interviews, Kennedy has shared how he uses his platform to remind people that faith and reason can coexist, that belief in Christ isn't weakness, but courage. "It takes courage to admit you need grace," he said. "It takes strength to forgive, to love, to hope again." That's what I found in Christianity. And perhaps that's why his story resonates so deeply. It isn't about politics or religion, it's about a man's search for truth, a journey through doubt and despair that led him home. As he closed one of his speeches earlier this year, Kennedy looked out over a sea of faces and smiled. "If you're out there searching like I was," he said, his voice steady and soft, "don't give up. The truth isn't hiding, it's waiting for you." "I chose Christianity because it's where I found freedom, not rules. Grace, not guilt. Hope, not fear." The audience rose to their feet in applause, not for the senator, but for the sincerity in his words. It was more than a political moment, it was a human one. In a world that often celebrates power over peace, John Kennedy's story reminds us that even the strongest among us are searching for something greater. His message is simple, yet timeless. No matter how far you've wandered, faith can still find you and bring you home.